Let's go to London now. Joining me now is journalist Richard Sudan, whose grandfather was a member of the Windrush generation. And Andre Walker is a journalist who covers the British Parliament and a former Conservative Party staffer. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Andre, let me start with you. Aren't you concerned that just like last year, the wrong people are getting deported and this is going to be a major screw-up again?
No, I'm not concerned at all. I think it's important that we enforce our immigration law. After all, one of the big problems that we've seen recently is the way that people have tried to conflate their desire to increase immigration in the UK with not enforcing the law. You know, ultimately, the people on this charter flight going back to Jamaica are people who've been convicted of serious criminal offences, and those are the people that we don't want in our country. I think that Britain's
that's what everybody was told last year, right?
Place
Andre, that's what everybody was told last year, which caused the Home Secretary to resign. That's why there was a scandal, right? Because everybody trusted that the government's word was correct, that these are serious, really bad people and they're being sent very far away, but it turned out not to be true.
No, that was absolutely not the case last year. What happened with the Windrush generation was that some people, when they came into the country, were not given the correct documentation. Now, that is something that the government was unaware of. And so, obviously, when they came to check people's immigration documents last year, there were certain people who were put in a difficult situation. Now, what you're talking about here, and I appreciate that people have gone through a great deal of difficulty and a great deal of hardship, but the government estimates this is no more than 50 people. The people that we're talking about being deported now are people for whom there have been criminal convictions against them. We know there have been criminal convictions against them. That is well documented in court cases. So I think there is an important difference between those people who weren't supplied the proper documents 50 or 60 years ago and what's gone on today.
Okay, Richard Sudan, these are people with criminal convictions. This is British law being enforced. No more, no less. What do you think?
Well, actually, I think if we're going to talk about law and criminality, we can talk about the Home Office in a moment. But actually, it's not fair to say that all of those being deported have been convicted of serious offences. You're talking about, in one instance, for example, a parking offence and other minor offences. And of course, you cannot separate the fate of these Jamaican nationals from their British family, because many of them have family here. They've been living here since they were kids. A lot of these people, some of whom, by the way, have had a temporary reprieve for a moment legally. Many of these people have had their children here, they've been working here, they've been here since they were children, and also they've actually had applications currently in the Home Office before they've been deported. So actually, if we want to talk about due process, legality, I think there are more questions to be sort of answered on the side of the Home Office rather than this group of individuals. I mean, criminality is just a sort of very simplistic way to look at this. The Home Office has actually not still finished its review of the initial Windrush scandal, which erupted 9 months ago. And here we are, the deportations were temporarily halted, and now the Home Office has actually decided to begin this round of deportations again. And a lot of people feel, frankly, it's open season on these kinds of communities with the current climate in Britain at the moment.
Andre, why not wait for the review and then you can implement better policies and all move forward together?
Well, I think that there's no issue with the policy, is there? The policy is that if you're an illegal migrant to the United Kingdom and you've got no reason to be in the United Kingdom, then you will be removed from the United Kingdom. That sounds entirely sensible. But look, I think it's important to remember that deportations take place all the time. We have a constant battle with illegal immigration. It's easier in the United Kingdom because we're an island than it is perhaps in other places. But nonetheless, we do have a problem with illegal immigrants. We estimate there's around 300,000 in the United Kingdom. I think it is important to enforce the law. And I think one of the sad things about this debate, and one of the things that is wrong, is the idea that any black person in the United Kingdom ought to be in some way feel victimised by this. It's absolutely not the case. Somebody who's an illegal migrant to the UK can be of any colour, race or ethnicity. Certainly we have a major problem in the United Kingdom with people from Eastern Europe, non-EU Eastern European countries using fake EU passports. That's something that we've got an issue with. The idea that we should allow people to remain in the United Kingdom because even though they're illegal migrants, just because they've had children in the United Kingdom, I think is manifestly unfair.
Andre,
why should we be rewarding people who've come here illegally?
When David Lammy, the Labour MP, accused the department of killing black people, what did you think about that?
Yeah, he went, Well, I thought it was ridiculously shrill from a man who has made being shrill a hobby and a habit. Look, the idea that we should enforce the law is not an inappropriate idea. Now, I'm not against the idea of the British Parliament considering different immigration laws. In the past, we've had an amnesty on all illegal migrants. But the idea that you're not going to take any decision, you're not going to legitimise these people, what you're going to do is fail to enforce the law, seems to me to be a complete and total joke. Look, you know, everybody who comes to the United Kingdom illegally has a backstory, a sob story, if you like. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't enforce the law. If you wish to change the law, change the law. But the idea that we should just simply ignore the law, I think is crazy.
Richard Sudan, this is not about targeting black Britons. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I didn't actually say it was about targeting black Britons, although disproportionately, that's the effect it's having. And actually, Andre Walker, he's correct in pointing out that also it's not just black immigrants or immigrant communities generally. You've got Eastern Europeans that have also been slung under the bus with this vile kind of political climate. But one other point I think needs addressing is the children of some of these migrants are British citizens. And actually it's worth noting that the Home Office has actually told some of the parents that they should be raising their children via Skype. Now, no one's suggesting that if you're a criminal, you shouldn't pay the penalty, but actually these custodial sentences have already been served. And so why on earth are these people being punished twice? And furthermore, why are their families being punished? Because their children are British citizens. And if we're just going to say, well, they don't have any rights, well then, what are we talking about? What makes a citizen? Do these children not have the right to have their access to their parents?
Hang on a second. Hang on, I think there are a couple of points there, and I think it's important to address. So first of all, yes, if you've served your time in prison or wherever, paid your fine or whatever it is, yes, you have been punished for your crime, and you should not be punished again. However, if you are, in addition to a criminal, also an illegal migrant, then you shouldn't be in the United Kingdom. Now, the issue with the children, I think, is one of these very difficult and intransigent problems. But I simply make the point that if you come to the United Kingdom illegally, then you should be removed from the United Kingdom. The fact that you then got married in the United Kingdom when you shouldn't have been here, and had children in the United Kingdom when you shouldn't have been here, I don't think necessarily should strengthen your case.
Or lived here for 20 years.
Think of all those people who have come here.
Well,
absolutely, lived here for 20 years illegally makes it worse than living here for 1 year illegally, in my view.
Andre, when you look at the pushback, there was a petition, for example, more than 91,000 people pushed back, signed an online petition supporting Twane Morgan and his deportation. He seems to have had a temporary reprieve. When we dig into the details of the man's story, he was a soldier in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? Came back, suffered from severe PTSD, didn't get treatment for it, didn't quite have the help that he needed, beat someone up, went to jail for assault. He was in line for deportation. Of course, there's a deeper point to be made here. The British government was okay if he was being violent on their behalf in Iraq and Afghanistan, but if he beats someone up in the UK, he needs to be kicked out of the country. He seems to have got a temporary reprieve because there was pushback. You're saying all these people who are pushing back and championing the human rights of someone like him have no case. But we're seeing the fruits of it here because we have an individual case. You call it a sob story. Everybody has these stories because these people they've essentially been in the UK for decades.
That's right. Yeah, so of course that story is heartrending, as all of them are. I think the important point here is if you wish to change the law and say that everybody who served in the British Army under any circumstance in any capacity automatically gets British citizenship, hey, I'm with you. I think that's a great idea. I think that's appropriate and that's something we should look into. But that's not the position at the moment. The problem with these 91,000 people is we have a law in this country about illegal migration and we have rules on deportation. Every single time, anybody, hang on a second, every single person that is ever deported has a story, a backstory, right? If what we did was took no notice of the law whatsoever, then all you get is a free-for-all.
Isn't it convenient that this has been pushed through right now?
No, I think it's deeply inconvenient. It's been pushed through now. But the problem is, when you get illegal migrants, when you get illegal migrants coming to the UK constantly, then you have to have a constant process of deporting them. Look, this is not an easy or pleasant thing to do. Nonetheless, we are a country that is a target for illegal migrants, and we have to have a process of dealing with that. And the people, these 91,000 petitioners, essentially what they want is every single case to be an exception to the rule, i.e. you have no rules whatsoever. Well, we have to protect our public services, we have to protect our jobs, and we have to protect our border. And somebody has to do that job.
Richard?
Look, law is not the sole measure by which we should be really looking at this debate because, by the way, slavery used to be legal in this country. Yes, and I think if we just keep coming back to this same kind of argument about legality and law, fair enough. But slavery wasn't legal? Slavery wasn't legal, Andre. Is that what you said?
No, of course it wasn't legal.
Just slavery was
slavery was ended. Slavery was ended when a High Court judgment said that slavery was not legal in this country, and actually all you were doing was illegally detaining people.
Slavery ended when No, it didn't actually. Slavery ended.
We're going to get into a semantic debate here, Andre. It was clearly legal until it was made illegal. It was clearly practiced and acceptable until it was practiced by the Crown.
No, hang on a second.
Hold on, it was practiced by the Crown, Andre. I mean,
hang on.
There's no nuance here. This is the only level of debate you're going to get with Andre Walker. He's going to keep talking about legality and criminality. There's no nuance. There's no humanity with looking at these stories. He says tongue-in-cheek. He calls them sob stories.
Slavery was okay. Hold on. So Richard, I'm going to give you a point to. I'm going to give you a chance to wrap us up, Andre. Slavery, let's take the word legal away. Slavery was clearly allowed until it was not allowed, and let's park that off and put that aside. Richard Sudan, come in.
Well, if people wish to detain people illegally, then it's right that the High Court stepped in and stopped it.
Richard?
That seems sensible to me.
Look,
that is a case of enforcing the law.
Laws, we can talk about laws, we can talk about criminality. There are plenty of laws that are broken by the government. There are plenty of morally reprehensible policies pushed by the government. The idea that we're just looking at law and criminality as the sole measure in this debate. We need nuance in there. If we talk about laws being reformed, how do they get reformed? Well, the only reason some of these people that are being deported is because of public outcry, which shows you the disconnect between public policy and the government in this country, and how many ordinary people feel about the treatment of people who are citizens or have lived here for decades and should be citizens, or have citizens living here. There needs to be nuance in this debate, and actually, because of the otherization of immigrant communities over the last few years in particular, it's increasingly difficult to have a sensible, honest debate about immigration without all this kind of dog whistle, right-wing politics and hostility, which we're hearing all too much at the moment.
Andre, very finely, is this what you're doing? Is this dog whistle right-wing politics?
No, it's not. It's dog whistle left-wing politics. The truth of the matter is this country has laws in place about illegal immigration. We have processes in place. The Windrush scandal shows that those processes aren't perfect, but fundamentally, if you come to the United Kingdom illegally and you commit a crime, congratulations, you're going home sooner or later, and that is the right position. That is the position that's been democratically agreed by our Parliament and our government, and I think it ought to be enforced, and I'm glad to see that happening.
Andre Walker and Richard Sudan.
People are dying because of these wrongful deportations. Let's be clear about that. People are losing their lives. Families are being torn apart.
Rubbish.
These are the facts, Andre. People are dying because they've been deported. Their lives have been torn apart. Families ripped apart. This is a reality. Parents are being told that the only option they have to raise their children now is over Skype. This is the absolute hallmark of inhumane
enforcing the law.
Okay.
There is nothing.
Okay, gentlemen.
Inhumane policy. Okay. It's the law that you can't come here illegally.
Andre doesn't think it's inhumane. Richard believes it does. And I think I've got to wrap because we're out of time. Richard Sudan and Andre Walker, thanks for joining us here on the Newsmakers.